Hello and welcome along to the VMTV Rugby Pod, talking all things rugby with Alan Quinlan. A regular occurrence now in the studio, big money appearance.
Yeah, big time.
Champions Cup and Challenge Cup rugby was back at the weekend. Interesting results. Good win for Ulster, good win for Leinster. Munster, terrible evening for them in the wreck, and then Connacht in Bridgend, that comeback from the Ospreys. They'll be very, very annoyed about that. Overall, what did you make of the spectacle for the Irish provinces?
I think 50% return really, which is it's disappointing. I think Munster going to Bath was always going to be a difficult challenge. They're a brilliant side, Bath, and they've shown by winning the Premiership last year, the Premiership Cup as well, and the Challenge Cup, that they mean business. They have a really good squad. So even if Munster played well, they would have had to play it exceptionally well for 80 minutes to get a result beforehand. Very disappointed, obviously, with the first 20 minutes. I'm sure they will be. To go 28-0 down away from home is very difficult. They did react and try and show some fight and character after that, but really disappointing one. I think Leinster in Dublin against the Quinn side, missing good few of their internationals, their top players. Scored 7 tries, I think. It's hard to be critical. I think they were a little bit passive and porous at times. And maybe we expect this spark from Leinster all the time. So it's a good return for them. I think the big test is away from home this Friday. For Ulster, I think really, really dominant performance, I think, and they're clicking into gear really nicely now in the URC as well. So it's all positive up in Ulster at the moment, and they're gaining momentum, confidence, all that kind of stuff. So they played really well on Friday night. Let's be honest about it. I think Richie Murphy won't be fooled by the performance of Racing and the team that they sent as well. And Connacht will be fuming, really. 21-0 up in the Challenge Cup away from home at half time. I know you're strong breeze against you in the second half, but you think you've enough to get the job done and see the result. There's always going to be a reaction from the Ospreys, so disappointing. But that's the nature of Europe, whether it be the Challenge Cup or the Champions Cup. You've got to be on it, and they can throw up some strange results, and that's what we saw at the weekend.
If we focus on your old side, Munster, we were sort of having a bit of a joke, but not really. Were you involved the last time? It was worse 29 years ago against Cardiff. You promised you weren't. But to concede that many tries and 28-0 down in 20 minutes, scrum going backwards, after a very good start in the URC, does that just show Munster are a good bit off the pace, Alan, or can you just have a blip?
Well, we'll know probably in the next couple of weeks. It's a very attritional time for all the clubs. On the back of November internationals, everyone is looking at 10 straight weekends in all the leagues, with Europe, their domestic league, all these derbies at Christmas, stuff like that. So it's the toughest time of the year. You can't play every player in every game. It's 10 weeks in the trot. So there has to be a bit of rotation here and there. So for Munster, I think losing to the Stormers, given the nature of that loss, 21-6 up at half time, worrying signs in the second half, set piece dominance for the Stormers, physicality, and we saw a good bit of that on last Saturday over in Bath as well. Munster's line-out was so poor at the start of the game. They lost 5 or 6 line-outs, I think. There's probably 4 stolen and maybe 2 slapped down, and it results in territorial advantage and scores for Bath.
We saw that actually in Bordeaux as well, didn't we?
Yeah, they were very sloppy. And look, it's I think Tyburn spoke about it after the game, that maybe he should have shortened the line. Really difficult conditions, Stuart. We have to say that. Wind and rain early in the game. Your old traditional kind of mentality is throw to the front. But Bath were numbering up and matched up really well there, and didn't allow Munster win their own possession. They were on the attack in the attacking half. Couple of times they lost lineouts, they end up down at the other end of the field. It's 14-0 to Bath. So I'm sure they'll have looked back and be really frustrated with some of their execution around their set piece, and been really frustrated with that. They need to be better, there's no doubt about that. So is it a blip, or are they a good bit off? Well, I think you're coming up against a side there that are up near the top table now, Bath. It's fair to say that there's probably 4 or 5 teams here that you'd fancy before the competition kicks off. Toulouse, Leinster, Bordeaux, maybe Saracens, Northampton got to the final last year. And Bath are probably ones now that are putting their hand up and saying, we want to have a crack at this. We have good squad depth. They've lost once this year in the league, and they've been playing really well. So I think the amount of kicking we saw in the game probably didn't surprise me because of the conditions, but we're seeing a lot of kicking in a lot of games now, and that's just the nature of it. And Munster were poor in the backfield as well in the receipt of those kicks. I think Bath retained something like 11 kicks, which is a brilliant return for them. So look, 11 kicks retained. Munster retained 5. So that's where the dominance was: set piece dominance. Those kick receipts from Munster, a lot of up and unders, a lot of box kicks from Spencer. He was brilliant at scrum half. And the thing that would concern me and frustrate me the most probably is the physicality at times. Bath were kind of bullying Munster and not letting them settle, being really physical defensively and smashing Munster back a little bit. So, they reacted, to be fair. They did react, and which is a positive thing, and would indicate that there's stuff here they can fix. It's as you go up on the level, Stuart, whether it be from URC to Europe to international, you get less time on the ball, you get more pressure from the opposition, you get higher quality of players you're playing against, and you can't afford to have numerous mistakes and errors and inaccuracies, and that's what Munster had last week, and they got heavily punished for it. So it's very difficult to come back when you're 28-0 down away from home, and great Munster crowd there, over 4,000. Great atmosphere going in before the game. You know how synonymous Europe is with Munster fans and the history of the competition. We obviously have some teams who are sending second strings, which is disappointing. Munster tried to put their best foot forward, and they came up against a really, really good opponent in Bath. So you have to give Bath credit, and they're a very, very powerful, dominant, physical side, and there's some worrying signs there for Munster, no doubt. But I think they're better than that.
Okay.
So we won't know for a period of time whether they can go kind of deep in the competition. I think Michael Milne and John Klein not starting the game kind of upsets their rhythm, if you like, and takes away 2 very, very physical players, which doesn't help. Jack Crowley not playing as well. So they've got to bounce back, and that's the nature of the competition. If you have a bad result in Europe, you're back home the next week, and they've got to step up this week.
You touched on it there, and it's made the headlines a lot this week, the kicking game. What was it this time last year, a wee bit before that? World Rugby came in, put in sort of new stimulations and laws that you can't escort and block, so to speak, the chasers of the kick. And you're trying to
clear the runway, essentially.
Yeah, clear the runway. Now that has happened, and people are saying the game's too long, more scrums are happening because people are knocking on, and it's actually advantageous to the kicking team, not what it was originally supposed to be brought in to be the catching team, if that makes sense, and they should have quick ball and it should create more space in the backfield. Mike Prendergast's very vocal, saying he doesn't agree with it, doesn't like it.
Ross Byrne spoke about it as well.
I think Johnny Sexton mentioned as well.
Yeah.
What is your overall summation for it? My thing would be, yes, while that's happened, but before we had long caterpillar rucks, and it wasn't exactly a gorgeous spectacle either, but maybe it was better back then.
Yeah, I think if you're obviously it is encouraging more kicking now, because it's a way in the game that you can retain the ball. And Bath did that 11 times. They retained possession from kicks. They kicked the ball 38 times in the game, which is a lot. When you're getting into the late 20s, early 30s with kicking, it just people don't want to see that. But it's so effective, and all the video analysts of all the teams will be presenting the stats to their coaches, saying, well, here's the percentage of returns that are happening across the board. So you can't blame teams for doing it. And obviously, if you've more, some would argue then it's a 50-50 scenario. So if you're good enough, you can win it in the backfield and retain the ball and win that kick. But yeah, we're seeing a lot of 50-50 ball bobbling everywhere, scrums, knock-ons, all that kind of stuff. And we want to see running rugby. We want to see people moving the ball. But coaches, teams, are they going to choose the latter? Because that's what the stats suggest. And I think we've seen a little shift in Ireland this year in obviously in the way they've changed their game, and they're probably looking to play more territory and get into the opposition half quicker. And again, this is all based on stats and results. I don't have them in front of me, but the stats are showing that this is the quickest possible outcome for you in gaining territory by kicking well. And Ross Byrne. Obviously, if Mike Prendergast is coming out after the Bath game saying that, well, their back three weren't really good at retaining possession, but the fact that you've other people saying it in the game and that it's causing a little bit of frustration, but ultimately. This isn't World Rugby or somebody sitting in an office deciding to make these law changes. All the coaches and unions have a say in all this stuff, and it was brought in for the right reasons to probably stop this illegal blocking and actually make it more of a contest. And so it's, I suppose they'll look at this again and decide when people are being vocal about it within the game. Because
is there a bit of you thinks that our teams in Ireland just need to be better in the air as well?
Absolutely, 100%. So it is what it is. So be better at pick the right players. Ross Byrne referenced possibly in the future that they'll be putting second rows out as wingers to box kick scrums and stuff like that. But look, who knows? I think you just need to be better. I think in an overall context, we don't want to see 5-second rule because a number of years back, you could see the ball at the base of rucks for 7, 8, 10 seconds. That's changed with the referees demanding scrum halves use it within that 5 seconds. But it's a risk-reward scenario and teams are deciding not to take as much risk. And if you have brilliant backfield players or brilliant wingers who can actually chase and dive through the air, Hugo Keenan's an outstanding exponent of probably winning 90% of those 50-50 ones in the air. But if the kick is really good, it's a bit of a lottery when there's a number of players in under it. So there's certain people in the game who are outstanding at that. Canan Moody is brilliant for South Africa because he's big as well. He's tall, and his application is brilliant the way he gets in the air. And you can imagine if you're a winger or a full back and you're waiting under the ball, the momentum is all with the guy chasing and getting through the air. And so, yeah, it's something that probably needs to be looked at. If the numbers are saying that, well, it's increasing the amount of kicking and it's taken away from possibly teams attacking and moving the ball. But as I said, coaches are trying to get results. They're trying to keep their jobs. They're trying to nudge forward into different parts of the competition. And they'll always take the path of least resistance in the sense of getting that territory. And I remember Munster won a URC in the Stormers in 2023. And to be fair, they kicked excellently off the base of the rucks and from out half as well. And Shane Daly and Calvin Nash that day were outstanding in retaining, getting ball back. So, if it's working for you, you won't have a problem with it. But obviously, if you have a day then where... but I think, as I said, in the overall context, if we're seeing scrum halves just constantly
and the game's probably too long.
Yeah, and look, there's a big trend in the Gallagher Premiership of a lot of kicking, high number of kicks. So, look, the coaches and the power brokers in the game certainly need to look at it and be aware and conscious of that.
Maybe it doesn't help as well that the week Mike Prendergast, as you say, is coming out, Ben Spencer's probably arguably the best box kicker in the world, or
Yeah,
certainly
yeah,
in
he
Europe
is,
anyway.
Yeah,
Or one
and
of them.
look, to be fair, Mike is that attack mindset. He wants to move the ball and
Keep
but
ball
yeah,
lively.
yeah, and look, definitely if you're in your own half, it's an effective tool, isn't it? And that's the reality. So we can't take it away. You have to be able to. We don't want teams to, from a kick-off, win the ball, slow ruck, solid defence in front of you and expect the team to run it out and start throwing it out, moving it right across their back line. No, of course, it's a game that you can. And it's a great part of the game as well, in a sense. You know, I love those challenges. But if the trend is showing that teams are continuously doing this way out the field, even in the opposition half, maybe it needs to be looked at.
Moving on, or cross provinces to Leinster, I actually said at the top, a great win, and I'm not really sure that is correct. A good win, I would say. 7 tries, and maybe we're a bit harsh on them. But one for you this week, if I'm right in saying Harry Byrne is probably going to start, and if he hasn't, it sort of defeats the purpose of the question, but I'm going to go with it. Harry Byrne starts on Saturday or Friday against Leicester, whenever it is. Sam is on the bench. It is Andy Farrell's problem, but it's not Andy Farrell's problem. That's what Leinster have gone and are going to go with. How does that sit in the Irish ranks, Alan?
Yeah, it's I wouldn't look too much into this because I think there's
Okay, you just think it's rotation?
Yeah, I think it's because you're on that 10-week scenario.
Can you see where I'm coming from, though?
Yeah, and Interpro's coming up in a few weeks. I think there's, they've got Ulster and Munster and busy Interpro matches coming up, and I think it's probably in one eye on that as well. And plus, Harry Byrne has shown spark this year, and he's shown quality, and he's shown some really good performances. So I don't think it's obviously, if this goes on for a period of time, and then you might kind of say from Andy Farrell's point of view but I wouldn't read too much into this. I think it's giving him an opportunity in a big game that can make a difference to him and give him a real confidence booster. Sam Prendergast was very good last week. He's on the front foot a lot, to be fair, and there's a dominance up front. But yeah, I think it's probably down to rotation because there's a raft of matches coming up in the next couple of weeks.
Rieko Ioane gets his debut. He could have easily scored, but he went for the team option and gave it out wide. To say the obvious, he should be such a bonus for them.
Yeah, he's an incredible athlete. I'm not sure if when I saw Rieko Ioane first, it was probably at that Lions tour in 2017 when he came on the scene with the All Blacks. He might have got capped that summer before that Lions tour, but he was an incredible winger and an athlete and a finisher and so athletic. I'm not sure he's a centre. I think he's an exceptional rugby player, and I mean that with the utmost respect.
So
he's
fancy as my out winger for you?
He's a player I would have loved to have signed with Munster. If I was involved with Munster, and I often say this, well, who would I sign? Rieko Ioane has always been at the top of my mindset as regards what a player, what an athlete, broken field runner. When the game opens up, he's phenomenal, and he's physical as well and has a real dog in him. So look, obviously he can play in the centre, and he has done a number of times for the All Blacks as well. So I'm not saying he can't play there, but he for me, he's probably a more powerful winger. But for Leinster to get someone at that level is phenomenal. He's world class. So I hope I don't sound like I'm critiquing him here. Sometimes I don't know, is he as comfortable there as in the wing? He's a fella, if you get the ball to his distribution, even though he gave Jimmy O'Brien a brilliant pass and could have probably went and scored himself last weekend. I'm just not sure he's the best distributor from not from a skill set point of view, from a decision making point of view. He's had a dip. Obviously, the All Blacks haven't picked him in November. He's been part of the tour group, but I'm sure he'd be disappointed with that. But what a signing for Leinster! What a player, and somebody who has real strength, power, and has great experience as well. He's a top quality international.
And they'll learn their lessons, do you think, and pick him in all the huge games?
No, I don't think so. I don't think he's not like Jordy Barrett is a world-class 10, 12 fullback. I think Rieko Ioane's world-class winger, not a world-class centre, but can play in the centre absolutely, and he could play with any international team. So I don't think there's the same pressure as regards, or the same narrative as to that he has to start. But if you have someone of that kind of broken field ability that wants to give you extra spark, there's every chance he does start every game. So I'm sure if it comes down to a kind of a decision of a 50-50 call between someone else, it'll be in Leo Cullen's mindset about the Jordy Barrett scenario not starting against Northampton. There's a little bit of a negative spin in Irish rugby at the moment, and a little bit of a, after November, I think question marks about Leinster after Northampton last year. They still have a number of players missing, a lot of quality, and it's about getting results this time of year in the business end of the season, and then put yourself in a strong position in the knockouts.
Not much negative, as I say with a smile on my face, about Ulster. Amazing how rugby works. Changed the last couple of months. Richie Murphy lost a lot of games for Ulster last year in his coaching group, and the players obviously finished well down the pecking order. And then this season, Mark Sexton's come in. His stock has just hit the roof, and Murphy's got it all clicking at the moment. A super win against Racing. Yes, it was against a young team and a different team. Then they go to Cardiff. But it's all changed in Belfast for Ulster, and there's a real feel-good vibe, even being back up home. People are very excited to go and watch Ulster, and
they're
you can
positive,
see why.
Yeah, they can. Absolutely, they're playing really well.
Also, wait.
Yeah, he's a really good player, and there's some players there who should come into the reckoning for Six Nations. It's a complete... being in the Challenge Cup isn't the worst thing in the world for him, in the sense of, I know they'll be disappointed they're not in Europe. Ulster fans will be as well. But they're gaining momentum. They're clicking from an attack point of view. As you said, Mark Sexton seems to be getting the best out of them. Their injury profile isn't bad at all. I think it's good for them. With Augustus coming in and Angus Bell making his debut last week as well, he's a brilliant player that adds a lot to him. So, yeah, I think you've got to... Look, they're going to probably have a tough period at times, and when you're winning matches and you're playing really well, scoring lots of tries, you have to be prepared for a dogged kind of a performance as well, or not playing that well, but figuring out how to win matches, and that's a sign of a good team. So we haven't seen him, I'm not saying that they have to go through that kind of a spell, but I like the abrasiveness and the doggedness of the forwards. It's always something that crops up, really, their set piece, their physicality up front. And their forwards are responding and doing really well. So they'll have a test in Cardiff. Cardiff have done really well in the URC as well, and they've started the season brilliantly. So it's one of those ones where this is a kind of a test now. Where are you at? And get a result over there, and the momentum kicks on and the confidence. But they're playing brilliantly, and rightly so. They should enjoy it, because there's a lot of positive signs there that they could, go deep in the Challenge Cup, possibly, challenge for it and win it, and also being right in the mix in the URC. But it's about consistency for Ulster, and I like the way they're playing, and they're playing full of confidence.
You mentioned the words "win it" for Ulster. That hasn't been talked about in a long time. How far off do you feel this squad is of maybe getting to a semi-final or a final?
Well, if you look at your pool stages, you get a result in Cardiff, and then you're away to the Cheetahs, which is...
That is in Amsterdam, if I'm
right.
Yeah,
it's a scenario that you think Ulster should have enough to win that. So suddenly, they should be saying
Last
internally... 16. We win our first 3 games, and then we've got Stade Francais at home in the fourth one. So you top your pool, you get a very favourable draw for last round 16, quarterfinal, semi-final, final. So this is where the hard work kind of pays off in the latter parts. I know there's still some very good competitions, and there's a few more teams will drop down from the Champions Cup for those knockout stages, but Yeah, they should have the ambition. But I know they won't be shouting about it, but if with the team that he's been able to pick in the last few weeks, it's a strong side, and they're playing really well. So that does stick in the muscle memory. But as I said, there'll be a few games they have to dog it out, and it won't always be perfect, and that's when we'll really know where they're at the moment. We know they can play when they get front football and pace into their game. They have a lot of threats and dangers, and players are full of confidence now. So it's about managing those tough games as well, and grinding out results. And that Cardiff and the Cheetahs, the next two results in Europe, our games in Europe are going to test that. Interpros, we'll see him play Leinster in a couple of weeks. Always difficult game. You're not really sure who's going to start, who's not going to start. There will be some rotation, but they're in a good place at the moment.
And the team in green, Connacht, seems to be sort of 3 steps forward, 2 back, or the opposite way round. Do you think Stuart Lancaster will be scratching the bits of his hair that he has, and frustration at times? That was a real kick in the teeth, that defeat, the second half. I know they had the likes of Bundyaki back, but the wind changed, but they let them back in. A couple of dodgy forward passes, mind you.
Yeah, the forward pass I think that was a forward pass at the end, and it wasn't checked, and it's
to
unfortunate
me, I
for
will
them.
stop on that. Why isn't that checked on?
I don't know. It should be. It's really poor. It should be checked. For anyone watching the game thought that's a forward pass. Bundyaki is remonstrating, trying to get him to check it, and obviously the TMO just doesn't bring it to the attention of the referee. Maybe they did look at different angles and it was marginal, and there wasn't enough evidence there. I don't know. But we shouldn't be bringing it down to a forward pass in the end. I think Connacht were poor. I think, particularly in that second half, I think if you're the Ospreys, they're thinking we've been really poor in the first half. The tries were close-in tries. It wasn't, backline moves that got Connacht 3 tries in the first half. They were very physical and direct, and they worked the conditions really well. But it's really difficult against such a strong breeze in the second half to gain territory and momentum. But their forwards probably needed to tuck the ball a little bit under the jumper, get their maul going, step up and make the hard yards, and defend probably better. The Ospreys are a good side, and so I think he'll be very frustrated with that, because it was in the back of a really positive performance against the Sharks the week before in the URC, and some question marks still there again with them and the way they kind of capitulated in that second half. But it wasn't all bad. It wasn't one of those ones that, oh God, it was a shocking second half. I think they just didn't manage the game at all in the conditions. And the Ospreys sensed it. You could see the energy and the work rate from them. And they punished Connacht in that second half last week.
I do think they're in a better place than they were.
Yeah, they are.
Oh
no, I think. Look, obviously, there's no alarm bells scenario there. Even the couple.
He's done pretty well so
even
far,
a couple of
hasn't
the
he?
games that they lost, there's stuff to look at, and it's a couple of frustrating pointers there. The Bulls' home game, the game away in Cardiff. There's 2 more wins they should have picked up in the URC. So it's small things, but and again, he's trying to rotate his squad and give guys games. So he hasn't picked the same team week on week. A lot of his squad have had plenty of involvement. So steep learning curve for him how to manage that again, and so really disappointing for him, because it was a game, I think, when you're 21-0 up, no matter where you are, you'd expect to get some sort of a score or some sort of territory in that second half to maybe kick a penalty, or they just didn't get any sort of territory in that second half.
And just finishing the Champions Cup and Challenge Cup topics today, there's a couple of must-wins. Connacht must beat the Black Lion, pretty much, and Munster should win at home to Gloucester. Or should, not a very good term in rugby.
I think obviously with the game being on in Super Value Porky Queeve, I think it's there's going to be great excitement. I think, over 35,000 tickets sold. It could be close to 40,000 by Saturday. It should be a great occasion. We've been there before. We were down for the South Africa game. We covered it with Virgin. The atmosphere was incredible. Wasn't there for the Crusaders one, but it's kind of a unique scenario, and there's great excitement about it. But the team have to have looked at and understand where they went wrong this week. The coaches will have presented to them, and they need a reaction, because if you don't get a performance and a result this weekend, you're in big trouble, because you have to win your home games. And I think it's part of the kind of stipulation, I would say, is that they've got to try and be getting into round 16 quarter-final scenario with in Europe as well. So expect a response from Gloucester had a strong win at the weekend against Cass side, who were probably weren't at full strength. It'll be interesting to see Ross Byrne being back playing against Munster in a Gloucester shirt. So they're a dangerous side. They're a strong side. They haven't had a good run. They've won one league game out of 6. So they're ninth in the Gallagher Premiership. So on paper, you think Munster have to get a result and should get a result on Saturday.
Yeah, Munster, Europe, and Porky Queeve. The three words there should happen.
And probably a response that you expect. I'm sure that after Bath at the weekend, you're going to get a bit of fire. But look, that doesn't guarantee you anything. They've got to go out and execute much better this weekend, particularly around their set piece.
Well, we didn't see you last week. We had a well-earned rest on, so you did. And I must get your take on the Rugby World Cup draw. Ireland, Scotland, Uruguay and Portugal. I think we are allowed to say it. The draw couldn't have gone much better.
Yeah, I think obviously with it been expanded, the World Cup, I think the problem you have here probably is some lopsided pool games right across the board in the early parts of the competition. So, which obviously they're trying to give more countries an opportunity to play in a World Cup, and that's special for them. But yeah, it's a favourable draw. There's no doubt about it. But ultimately, there's a body of work to be done with the Irish team. Whether it be the vast majority will get there or not, we don't know. But it's there's a little bit of a dip at the moment. And I as I said, this is probably throughout November. We got everything right in preparing for 2023 and just came up short against the All Blacks in the quarterfinals. It could have been so different. So yeah, the draw is obviously favourable and is more of a possibility. But if Ireland do well and top the group and come out at around 16, you're looking at Argentina in a quarterfinal.
Has your brain allowed you to think?
Well, I haven't even
RGs?
gone. Would you believe I haven't even started? I didn't. It's just I read some pieces on this, but like Argentina. They've shown over the years how good they can be on their day, and what Felipe Contepomi is doing with this group. There's a lot of young players in there. It's a long way off to know where they're at. I think at the last World Cup, that was the opportunity of a semi-final against Argentina. If you beat New Zealand dominated them and won really well. But you never know. Argentina knocked us out of a World Cup in 2015, so under no circumstances do you think, God, it's an easy path as regards finally Ireland winning a knockout game. Now there's a round 16 scenario, so it'll be really difficult in a sense. But I think Ireland need to just focus on the structure and the plan between here and now. Scotland, I think, will be rubbing their hands together, saying we owe Ireland a lot. So obviously it makes a big difference. When do you think they will beat us on? God only knows. I've said it probably for the last 7 or 8 years. Every time we've been to Murrayfield, that this is the time that I'm really worried that Scotland can do it. They've been inconsistent on their day. They can be outstanding. So I think the last 2 World Cups, Ireland have had really dominant wins against Scotland. So I'm not sure it's a good thing that they're there again and you kind of have to go again. But look, we'll know obviously 12 months from now how things are shaping up a little bit, and the kind of narrative that's out there, and the feeling is that Ireland need a little bit of an injection of a few new players, or even just to find form in their game. That was so good going into the 2023 World Cup. So look, at the end of the day, you need a little bit of luck. I think it hasn't been all unlucky for Ireland in all those knockout games that they lost, but it's a favourable draw, isn't it? And
South Africa could play New Zealand earlier than expected.
Yeah, again, look, if South Africa keep going the way they're going, they're setting the bar so high with.
Can they keep
with their
widening the
game.
gap on? Or do you think this is the gaps that the biggest it'll be?
I don't know. I think they've some brilliant coaches. I think what Tony Brown has added to their attack has probably widened the gap, and then the development of players, the level that the skill set that has developed in all these individuals. South Africa have always had big physical players, but I think fitness level, skill set, game plan, all that stuff, since Rassie Erasmus has gone in there himself, Jack Nienaber initially, their game plan for the 2019 World Cup was quite direct and simplistic. Really good kicking game, set piece dominance, and then some X factor from some people out wide in the back line, Cheslin Colby, Mapimpi. And the final was where they produced that incredible performance. They did, I think in 2023, they don't have to overextend themselves, because a lot of the times they can have that dominance. But I think where their game has gone to now is at an extremely high level. So much quality, so much depth, and can play numerous different ways. So the gap is there for everyone to see. And I think obviously what happened in Wellington against New Zealand was a real kind of reminder to the world that these guys, when they turn it on, can be phenomenal. And that win in Paris as well, with 14 men. So the dominance in Dublin, the score could have been a lot bigger. So they've laid down a real marker, and it's up to the other international teams to try and get better and improve and chase them down.
Well, we have less than 2 years to do so. Let's hope it happens. Thanks, Everett, for coming
Thanks,
in.
Stuart.
And we will review round 2 of the both European and Challenge Cup next week. Thank you for listening.